This coffee table is from IKEA, and this table is a similar size table that I built from solid wood. In this video I'll show you why IKEA tables are so cheap and how you can make something that will last a lot longer than this crap. Let's get on with it. I'm sorry, IKEA. So I was approached by a client who wanted a dining table. And I gave them a quote that got turned down because of the price. And they even gave me the IKEA option argument. So this video is my response to that email. I'm going to let both the tables endure what happens in a family of 5. And I will of course compare the cost of the tables later on. And how much would a woodworker charge for making a coffee table like this?
I would probably charge somewhere in the neighborhood of...
I bought this table from IKEA. It's $15, so let's assemble it really quickly. Now the assembly is so basic. It's one screw, it's double-sided. You put it in the table, rotate it around, and then you put the leg on and screw it on. That's it. It's very quick assembly for sure. That's one table done. Now let's go for the second one. Alright, so it took me no longer than 10 minutes to go from a cardboard box into this, and there's a bit of irony in that, but we'll get to that later. Right, so this table from IKEA is only $15. But then, how long will it last? To try this out, I replaced our coffee table with this one from IKEA. I just removed the pine trash table that I've built before, and I told the family to use the IKEA coffee table as normal. And then I left them to go at it. It only took me 10 minutes, but it got me kind of sweaty. While the rest of the family were having a go at the IKEA table, I started building my own. This was of course a pretty simple build in terms of woodworking, meaning a beginner could definitely do this. I milled the material, which in this case is ash. This part always takes more time than I anticipate, but it can be avoided by buying wood that is pre-milled. And if that's the case, you don't need a planer thicknesser. But there's more to it than just milling the wood that I don't show on camera. I don't show you how I empty the dust collector from chips, or how I wax the machine table, or change the blades. Or even when I go to throw the dust away. For the glue up, I decided to use dominoes. It doesn't add any extra strength to the glue up, but it does keep the wood parallel to each other during the glue up, removing one issue that can happen while gluing up the wood. That machine is expensive and it isn't needed, but I have it so naturally I use it. But it adds cost since I use extra material. The dominoes themselves are the wooden plugs that are attached, and of course they don't come for free. While the glue was drying, the kids kept going at the IKEA coffee table. No mercy. Once the glue was dry, I could go ahead and cut the tabletop to size. For this I'm using a track saw and a track. There's nothing more to say about this. But then I used a 3D printed router jig to create a roundover on the corners of the tabletop. I can use the 3D printed jig to draw out my roundover with a pen. This roundover is made to give the table some finesse instead of making the corners all square. I could then cut out the bulk of the material with the bandsaw. There is no precision needed here. I just want to remove as much of the material as close to the line I drew as possible, making the next step of using the router with a flush trim bit quicker. This router bit has a ball bearing that follows the 3D printed jig and duplicates the pattern on the wood. There were some nut holes in the wood, so I decided to fill that with epoxy before I did the rest. And epoxy isn't cheap, but it's the easiest way to fill those holes quickly. But that also means you have to wait until the epoxy dries. I did all of that off camera, but you've probably seen it done before. Then I used my biggest chamfer bit with the router to create a detail on the underside of the tabletop. And no, I'm not making a carbon copy of the IKEA table because that would be boring. It's like the simplest drawing of a table you can imagine. It's like a table you can make in, what's that called? Minecraft. The legs are something I stole from an old coffee table, but you can buy these or just make your own for the table. I wanted this to be as quick as possible to keep the cost down. Attaching these legs are easy because they have this mount that you attach to the bottom of the table with a couple of screws, and then you can screw the leg in place. Now, that's the weakest point of this coffee table, and if I were to add more time to this, I could make this even better by making a frame underneath the table that would hold the legs. But one upside of using these legs instead are that you can take the table apart very easily for transportation. And it resembles the IKEA table in that way. Another downside of the legs were that they aren't made out of ash, so the table won't look good like this. So I decided to give this a coat of Rubio Monocoat Pre-Color Intense Black, which basically stains the wood black. So what about the IKEA table that my kids are using? Well, they were treating the coffee table as normal, but that means drawing outside the paper, throwing toys on it, eating on it, and even using it as a hideout. So now I have this, a pretty sturdy coffee table with a really nice finish, or at least that's what I think. I did, however, make a mistake with the finish because I noticed afterwards there was a small crack in the wood. I filled it with CA glue and tried reapplying the finish, but it just doesn't work together with the rest of the finish as good. But for now, this is gonna stay in our house, so it doesn't really matter. I can reapply it whenever. But to sum up the cost, the wood was $40, so already there we've broken the budget of the IKEA table, but hang tight, there's more. The legs were $30 and the finish around $10 to $15. I've also included wear and tear and also using glue and stuff like that for an amount of $20. The labor amounted to about 4 hours of work. And what would you charge as an hourly rate? I figured that $100 was not too much and not too cheap either. So in total, I would charge somewhere around $500 for this table. But I thought it would be interesting to see what someone else says about the price if they were to make it. So I asked a friend of mine who I know has another way of calculating the cost of a project.
What's up, Swedish maker? It's the Texan maker. And great table, by the way. So how much would I charge for something like that? If I took on the job, I would probably charge somewhere in the neighborhood of $750 to $1,000.
Okay, so my idea of the price is a bit lower than what Drew would charge. He has a really interesting idea on pricing your work that doesn't just depend on the material cost and an hourly rate.
For what I'm doing, where I'm at, I have 3 kids. If I'm going to take on a project, my day rate is probably around $750. Now, I don't make that every day. That'd be nice. But for me to get into production mode and guarantee a perfect product and everything, that'd be like the minimum that I would want to make. A tip that I would give anyone, and I recently learned this, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't know about this earlier, is what I would typically do in these situations is I'd have a budget client come to me, but I don't know they're a budget client yet. And I would invest all this time, and then I'd get into this mindset of trying to win their business. And then I would show them all these things. And then it's like, yeah, I really want you to make it. And then we get to that awkward point on price. And it's like, I've not been wanting to talk about it. They've been scared to ask about it. And then we get to the point of the price. And then I say, yeah, this is going to be $500 or this is going to be $1,000. And then they're like, oh, I wanted to spend $50. And now I've wasted all this time and they've wasted all this time. And then I'm put in this position of, well, do I just discount this to make them happy and to win the job. And then the whole time I'm just not happy. So on something like this, if someone came to me and wanted that, the very first thing I would do is say something along the lines of this. Clients that get things like this tend to pay people like me anywhere between $500 to $1,500 for a piece like this. Is that a budget you're comfortable working in? Okay, that took like 10 or 15 seconds. If they immediately go, oh, no, that's too much money. All right, well, you can go to IKEA. But if they say, oh, no, that's fine. Well, then now I know the type of client I'm working with. I took that from Chris from the future. Not the future, like that's the YouTube name, the future. And that puts it on them and not on you. And so instead of it's like you're charging too much, it's can they afford that much? The problem with IKEA is that one, their build quality is trash. When people want to compare, that versus $500 custom, it's like, no, IKEA is working with economies of scale on a global level, and they're using plywood that's basically sawdust and glue, and they're flat packing everything, and they're using machines to do all this. If you want a human being to make you a one-of-a-kind item that's custom made to you, you're not just buying a piece of furniture, you're buying a conversation piece, you're buying an experience, truthfully, and that comes at a cost. We almost always undervalue our time and our skill level. And listen, if someone is approaching you to build a piece of furniture, there's a reason why they're coming to you. They could go to IKEA, or they could go to Amazon, they could get it quicker and cheaper. But so I always assume if people are coming to me, it's not because they want to be charitable. It's because they have a problem. And to hire the Texan maker to solve your problem is going to cost you money. Because when I go buy milk, they don't haggle the price for diapers and milk. So why is it okay to haggle the price on furniture? Good work, by the way. Proud of you.
Well, thanks, Drew. That's really valuable advice. Go check out Drew's channel. It's linked down below. Now, let's go cut that IKEA table apart. Okay, so it's time to cut this apart. This is the same table, but instead of white melamine, this is meant to look like oak, but it's not. Now, I'm not sure about this because I know what's inside the table, but I don't know what it'll be like cutting it apart. Don't try this at home, and I'm sorry, IKEA. Now this is cardboard. And I said there was a bit of irony to this because it came in a cardboard box and you basically fold it up into a cardboard table. But if you stack cardboard the right way, it can actually hold a lot of weight. So the pattern you see there is made not to make this table fall apart like the paper table it actually is. You can also see how thin the top layer veneer actually is. And the veneer is only 2 millimeters thick, but it's not actually veneer because that would make it real wood. This isn't sandable because it's not real veneer. The white one is pure white melamine, which you often see in shelves and stuff like that. But all IKEA tables won't consist of this paper though. This was the cheapest thing I could find on IKEA. Usually the furniture consists of a thin layer of veneer and some other type of wood below it, like MDF or something. And if it's real wooden veneer, it will actually sand, although you have to keep in mind that it's easy sanding through it. And that would of course reveal the MDF below, and that won't look any good. But if this IKEA table breaks, you won't be able to fix it because it's just cardboard. Now the reason it's so cheap is because of the material, of course. But also manufacturing a lot of them will keep the prices down. Now, you might think, but we only spent a fraction of the money on the IKEA coffee table and we could actually buy around 30 of them for the same price as this one. So it doesn't really matter if it breaks, we could just buy a new one. Well, that's the idea that IKEA was built on, giving us the pleasure of getting the latest trends in our house without paying a fortune. So if you always want the latest trends, IKEA is your place. I don't want to throw IKEA under the bus entirely. I mean, I am Swedish after all. They do a lot of great things as well. Our bed is from IKEA, for example, and I love that thing. And in it. That is so stupid. They make a wide range of stuff at a reasonable price. And they aren't trying to hide the fact that this is made from cardboard. They actually show it on their website. But the big downside, as I see it, is that we're spending so much of our resources instead of buying something that will last a long time. Like this cabinet, for instance. It's really old. And it's one of my favorite pieces of furniture. It isn't perfect by any means, and it doesn't need to be. We usually say it has a soul to explain the abstract feeling we get when looking at it. But when it breaks, it is worth saving because of that. But this doesn't have a soul, and therefore it isn't worth saving. So if there is anything to be learned from this video, let's all just consider our next purchase. Whether it be a new bed or a coffee table or a bedside table. Because even though you'll spend less money now, you'll win in the long run. And you can tell your kids who made the actual table and even pass it on to them. So this is the reason you should consider paying a woodworker instead of buying crap. It will cost you more, but it will last a lot longer. Spend wisely, save the planet. Bye.